So I thought I'd talk you through the assembly of this differential for the Burrell traction engine. So here's the ring gear. Now this has, as you can see, 3 slots, and each of these slots take a pinion gear. So this is the pinion gear, 10 teeth, 0.5 mod. You can see looks like a little flower, and sits on a piece of piano wire as an axle, and that sits into that slot there. So there's one that goes in there. Yep, a little bit. Yeah, that fits. And we put 3 of those around. So effectively, we've got like there you are, a 3-point support for the crown gears. So there's the pinion gears. So the engine inputs into that ring gear and turns it round. Now, if we just put that down for a minute, we'll look at the crown gears. Let's just take off this shim. I'll come to the shims in a minute. So I've got 2 crown gears, one each side, and these go either side of that ring gear and drive onto those tiny bevels and get driven by those tiny bevels. So what happens is those 2 sit with the ring gear in the middle, and then they can move relative to each other as the wheels move relative to each other. So if they rotate together, they get pulled around by the ring gear with those pinion gears, and then they can move relative to each other and spin in opposite directions. So now what I've got, because of the way I'm assembling this and it all gets clamped onto this ring gear here, I've got little brass shims, and I've worked out which one best suits which. But what I did was I made these up as a whole set of different thickness brass shims, knowing that I'm going to end up having to just adjust this differential to get it running right and the right engagement of the gears. So I cut 10mm, I drilled and reamed 10mm holes in different thicknesses of brass sheet. I then clamped those all together tight onto a mandrel and then turned the outside accurately. And you can turn these, if they're all clamped together, you get a thickness of brass that you can actually machine. So that's how I machine those, and then I just carefully, just very carefully on a diamond pad, just run those over and just take any flashing or any edges off them. So that's my brass shims that allow me to give me differences in the actual adjustment for the engagement. But I've got that right now. So I've got a brass washer that goes on here onto this ring gear. Now this is the one that's got a phosphor bronze bearing. So this phosphor bronze bearing supports the center of the ring gear and supports the crown gear the other side. So a little bit of oil on each of these gears, and let's just put a little bit on each one just to make sure there's oil in place on those, and on the pinions. Now, when we assemble it finally, I think we'll put some grease in there, but that's good for now. And then on this side, we push this crown gear in and line it up with those gears. It just takes a little bit to get it lined up. There we are. And we're lined up. And now you can see it sits on those 3 crown gears and rotates, and you can see there they are. As it rotates, you see those crown gears rotate. They are. So turn the crown wheel on the back. Now I have another shim on here. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in there again, just into there. There you are. And put the shim on there because that's the one that gives me the right spacing. And I'm going to put this gear onto there. It takes a little bit there. They're a little bit troublesome to get together at first, but once they go, they go. There you are. That's there. And now what I have is, so I have my 2 crown wheels that you can see I can rotate them in opposite direction. And then if I turn this, they rotate together. They turn together, but they can also have the relative movement between them, hence differential. And then I've got another shim, because at the moment this is just, I'm just assembling this just to get it run in. So I put a bit more oil on here, and then I'm going to put another shim on this outside here. Eventually this is going to have another gear on that drives the wheel, but for now I've got just an aluminium bush and a 4mm and M4 cap head bolt that goes through the centre there, and that holds that and gives me that all held together. And another washer on this end, and then I'll put a nut on the outside, and I'm just going to tighten that all up. So I'll put a spanner on there, and let's just hold this all up tight. Yeah. Now there's a little bit of running, but that's feeling really good. A little bit of dragging, but we're going to put this in the lathe, we're going to spin it up, and within a little while we'll have this running really well. So lots of oil on the differential. It's held here with a cable tie, just so that it's held very, it just stops it rotating and gives it a bit of compliance. Then I can switch it on. See, we can change direction and run it backwards. There are. Once it's all together, it runs like a dream. So you can see those two crown wheels turning. I'm turning one, I'm holding the ring gear still. When I turn this crown wheel, because I'm turning it via the axle here, this one that's floating here, this crown wheel, runs in the opposite direction. So it's held really well with those 3 pinion gears that just support it. Oh, it runs beautifully.